welcome to Beauty in the Biz, where we talk about the marketing and business side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to plastic surgeons to get them more patients and more profits. And I have a special guest today that I'm really excited to talk to. It's Dr. Philip Miller, and he's a double board certified facial plastic surgeon in rhinoplasty and facelifts in private practice on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. He's been there more than 2 decades, and he's also a partner / owner of Gotham Plastic Surgery and Surgery Center. Now, Dr. Miller's a clinical associate professor in the Department of Otolaryngology, New York University School of Medicine, where he teaches facial plastic surgery to residents and students. Now, he has also authored numerous manuscript chapters and peer-reviewed journal articles for rhinoplasty and neck rejuvenation. Now, he's regularly invited to lecture on specific techniques with his peers at national facial plastic surgery meetings, which is how I know him, and he's been voted Best Doctors in America and Top Doc of New York since 2007. And in 2019, he won the Castle Connolly Top Doctors Award, and he's gotten much PR from the Discovery Channel, NBC, tons of magazines, as well as the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. So welcome to Beauty in the Biz, Dr. Miller. It's a pleasure to have you.
Great to be here. Great to be here. And nice to finally see you. It's been some time, unfortunately. We haven't had a chance to see one another at our normal stomping grounds at all these meetings.
I can't wait to get back, by the way.
Are you going to the Vegas meeting? I'll be there.
No, I'm going to wait until probably the global meeting in November in Miami.
I'll be there.
Oh, great. I'll see you there. All right. So one way I would like to start out is you currently have your own practice in Manhattan with your own surgery center with another surgeon, but you didn't start there. What was your journey? Did you first, when you are done with fellowship, did you join another practice? Did you go into hospital? How did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah. I'll probably answer, or I'm going to answer, obviously, on what I did, but also in the mindset of those who might be listening and how best to go about answering that question for them. And I would say, I think the important thing is to sort of do an inventory of your resources and ask yourself, ultimately, what do you want to attain? What do you want to achieve? What do you have currently in order to get there? And I didn't come from means. I didn't have a lot of money. I knew building a practice in New York City was almost going to be impossible. And so I sort of always knew that I wanted to do a little bit of academics, but that I also wanted to have my own private practice. So I did explore when I first ended fellowship, going into other practices, but realized that I would probably end up following the footsteps of so many other facial plastic surgeons who joined these group practices with the idea that they would be the group practices facial plastic surgeon, only to end up doing a smattering of this or that and ended up really not doing much of anything facial plastic surgery-wise. And I didn't want to fall into that trap. And so I had the honor and the privilege of being invited back to New York University School of Medicine within the Department of ENT to be the second facial plastic surgeon there. And I jumped at it. And so I took up doing somewhat general otolaryngology at the start, but with the emphasis on building a facial plastic surgery practice. And I think for those who are listening, it's important for you to define success. And for me in those early years, I defined success not with making more money, but in the amount of facial plastic surgery procedures that I was performing. And even if my revenue stayed the same or fell, if I was doing more facial plastic surgery procedures year after year after year, I was succeeding. I was achieving my goal. And that's what I used as the criteria. And that's more or less what I did. As time went on, I slowly stopped doing a number of general otolaryngology procedures until such time as I was exclusively doing facial plastic surgery. And that took around 3 years or so, maybe 4. But after being in academics for 7 years, you get the itch. And the itch is to be much more independent, to have greater control over your life, to be able to institute policies and procedures that the institution itself, a large medical center, prohibits you from implementing, to incorporate technology that you know would be beneficial to your practice that the medical center is not up to yet in terms of their state of art. As you know, Catherine, I'm quite the techie, and I've incorporated that into my practice. And so in 2004, around 7 years after I was in my at NYU, I left and built this place, which is in Midtown Manhattan, bordering the Upper East Side, right off Park Avenue, and it's been just great ever since.
How did you structure? Did your partner join you at? Where did the plastic surgeon come in?
Right. Yeah. So I came here by myself,
okay.
But at the time I was having, and still do have, a lot of patients interested in body plastic surgery. So I wanted to bring in a body plastic surgeon and interviewed a number of them, and finally was introduced to Dr. Douglas Steinbreck, also a graduate of the NYU plastic surgery program. And the two of us just sort of hit it off. And he had a practice, he was renting space elsewhere in New York 2 days a week for his private practice. And then he would come to my office 2 days a week and see the patients that I would refer to him. And 1 year turned into 2, turned into 3, turned into more. And before you know it, we were sort of becoming really good friends and business associates, if you will. And I was helping him decide sort of what his next step would be one day, when I finally scratched my head and said, yes, you could do this, and yes, you could do this, but you know what? We really should talk about maybe being business partners. I know I'm going to want a partner in the future. You and I already have been together for 5 years. I know I can trust you. You know you can trust me. Let's work on this. And the truth is that we shook hands and we lived sort of in sin, if you will, as partners for a year without finalizing our contract or our agreement. Mm-hmm. It took almost a year for us to hash it out, but we ultimately did. And we realized that it was like any type of long-term relationship. We would have our ups and downs, but that ultimately we respected one another, mm-hmm. we trusted one another, and that we knew that we were better together than we were independently. And so no matter how difficult the issues have raised over the years, and knock on wood, things have been just terrific for years, we always worked it out. We always worked it out.
Is it a 50-50 partnership?
Here's what's fascinating about agreements is a partnership can be broken down into, percentage-wise, on just about anything and everything. So I could be, let's say, 100% owner of our partnership and agree to have zero profit. I can agree to take 5% ownership, but also negotiate that I receive 95% profit.
Right.
So I think it's important for everyone to understand that everything in a partnership or in a business is negotiable. And the percentages that people describe maybe in terms of ownership of the company, but that doesn't necessarily mean the revenue share. In our particular model, we basically, as they say, you get what you kill, so to speak. But we refer to one another all the time, so we benefit from each other's expertise.
It can get trickier, though, with the surgery center, because I've watched where maybe you're doing more surgery than the other guy, and hopefully that all divvies up. Like the overhead costs are congruent to the revenues brought in, so. And there are all different ways to do this, but I've just noticed number one, I think it works beautifully when you have very strong boundaries. You're neck up, he's neck down. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah, but we actually, one of the conditions of him coming on board from his perspective was he did not want that limitation.
Oh.
He wanted to be able to do above the neck.
Okay.
And I, quite frankly, felt awkward prohibiting him from doing. But being a specialist in the nose and understanding that really was my area of expertise, in addition to facelift and neck lifts, that was something that he acquiesced and agreed that would be my exclusive domain, and that worked just fine between the two of us. In terms of competing in the operating room, I have my 2 days, he has his 2 days.
Gotcha.
But, rising tides raise all ships.
Right.
And I don't see him taking I see him being successful, and I'm thrilled for him. I genuinely am. Mm-hmm. And I would much rather see that time be used in case I don't have a case that day. And he, I know, feels the exact same way. So we genuinely support one another. It's unique. It really is. I don't know how often a successful partnership can last. Ours has been going on now for probably over 12 years, and it's strong as ever. We've built out to offices in New Orleans and Chicago and LA. We're looking into Miami as well. So we're doing pretty well.
Whoa, I did not know that. All right, what's that all about? And does that have something to do with your Natra trademark?
No, it could. No. One of the things was that Doug had an interest out in LA. His spouse is a movie producer, and so they were out in California quite frequently. And so he felt comfortable being in LA, and he wanted some warm weather. I looked into it, and quite frankly, I didn't like the 5-hour flight and the 3-hour time difference, to be honest with you. I wanted something a little quicker, so I was going to go down to some place like Miami or to that effect. But then I had an interest myself in New Orleans, let's just say that. And so now I'm down there rather than opening up shop in Miami. And our former, Dr. Steinbrecht's former fellow who was here last year, we put up in Chicago. And so he's opening an office in Chicago, and Dr. Steinbrecht and I still want to open up a place in Miami or Palm Beach or something like that.
All right, what does that business model look like? Because I have just noticed in my 21 years of experience, when you're not there, to manage something that you're away from can be hazardous to your revenues. So yeah. How are you working that out? Or are these just med spas and you have nurses in them? Or are you guys really flying?
Protocols. Mm-hmm. So, it's got to work in the home base, and then you transport that elsewhere. And we have a concept that we apply to our patients, and that's called one voice. And that means no one is allowed to tell anything to any of the patients unless they know it's the truth. It's sort of doctrine, right? If you do not know the answer, it is worse to make it up than it is to just say, you know what, I don't know, let me go check. Okay, we do not want the patients getting two different directions, two different advice, sessions of advice. Same thing when it comes to running a business. There's only one way to do things. Now, that doesn't mean that there's the right way to do it. There's just one way to do it, and it's the way we all have to do it until we agree that we should change it and do it a different way. And that way, we all know how we do it, and that's how we do it wherever we are. And I think that's a way for this kind of oversight to work. To know that the protocols and processes that have worked in our New York office will work if we transport it elsewhere.
And how are you holding people accountable to follow those protocols?
Well, fortunately, our entire practice runs on a practice management software system that we can audit. And so we can see what they're doing and how they're doing, when they're logging on, when they're logging off, who they're putting in, what they're changing, what they're adding, if they're processing bills, payments, et cetera, et cetera. We can check that up against phone calls that are coming in. We can check that up against video that we have. So there's absolute ways that we can confirm, and I didn't come up with this. I attribute this to Dr. Vito Quatella, who I adore. You probably know Vito very well. Vito once told me, it's probably not his line either, but Vito once told me, it's not what you expect, it's what you inspect. And so we here are the protocols, but we turn around and we check them to make sure that they're being done properly.
So the business model is you have a working business model in New York, and now you have pretty much franchised it out to the various locations, is there another doctor, surgeon plopped into that location, or is it just staff and you guys are flying around doing the surgery?
No, there is one in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
In LA, not yet. In LA, it's Dr. Steinbreck.
Mm-hmm.
In New Orleans, it's me. In Miami, it will probably be the two of us. And then ultimately, yes, we would put someone else in there. But right now, we just want to have the luxury and the ability to go to those other locations.
That's a lot. That's a lot you took on, because you also have to look at the opportunity costs of, New York, you don't just, it's not a hobby to practice in New York. You're in the middle of the jungle. Like, you guys are pretty darn competitive there. And most of you just eat, sleep, and drink this, So when you're away, gosh, good for you if you can pull this off. Have you been doing it already, traveling? Because the travel also, I used to travel a lot and I loved it, but it's exhausting.
Yeah, I only travel, I go away, I'm there down in New Orleans. Personally, I'm there for a week. Mm-hmm. So I'll leave on Friday, and then I'll come back on the following Sunday, and then I'm seeing patients and operating down there for the week. So you're right. I think going away for a day or two and then coming back can be exhausting. Dr. Steinbreck's schedule in LA is similar to that. Right now in Chicago, it's just maybe 1 or 2 days, but he has someone, or we have someone out in Chicago at this point who is full-time, who is building their practice. Dr. Gonzalez, who's an amazing surgeon, terrific guy. He will do absolutely phenomenally well. We have no doubt about that. And again, we've taken our system, we've trained everybody here in New York, and then we've transported them out to Chicago.
Gotcha. Do you have any hiring tips? I'm always hiring staff for, practices all over the United States. And I have to tell you, I think I'm pretty good at it. And I would say my batting average is pretty darn good, but it's still, who knows? Some people just really interview well, some don't. Some, it takes them 60 days before they show their true colors, or it's just not a good fit. Any words of wisdom there?
Yeah, you know what? I think you're absolutely right. I think my only recommendation would be, you're absolutely right. People usually knock it out of the interview and then they may not perform very well. And that's what's so crazy is that those who don't interview well probably never even really get a chance to show us what they can do. Occasionally, maybe, but most of the time you got to knock it out of the interview. Yeah. But then after a while, I would say my advice would be get them in as fast as possible. Let them show you what they can do. And if they don't perform, get them out fast. Get them out fast. The Good to Great has that line, get them on the bus, and if they're in one seat, try them in another one, and then get them off. Well, we're a small organization. We don't have many seats. Yeah. So they're meant to come on for one seat, and if they don't work, get them off. But for example, I recently hired, it wasn't recent, a couple of years ago, I hired an executive assistant, really nice individual. I liked him. 3 days after he was working for me, I just called him in and I said, "You're a great guy. You're a nice guy. Clearly, you don't get me. Yeah. If I have to explain myself 2 or 3 times, then it means we're not on the same page. And I don't have a problem personally if you need to come back and ask for more directions. But if you're asking for the same directions, that's a problem. If I actually had a whole list, I'd love to pull it out and share it with you, but I sort of have my Dr. Miller's sort of pet peeves. I can try to remember them, but and these are good things to convey to those who you're going to hire so that they know who you're working with. Some other good things to facilitate hiring is to make it clear how the person who you're hiring wants to be communicated to, and how who they're working for needs to and wants to be communicated to. Because a lot of times that can be, in and of itself, a problem. I email them, but in fact, they prefer to be spoken to in person. They are waiting around to talk to me when I would much rather prefer them to send me an email. Something as simple as that can facilitate a communication and a job, a successful job. But getting back to my pet peeves that I was referring to is one of them was the notion of completing a job. Mm-hmm. And the analogy I say is, if I tell you I want you to change a light bulb in the room, I don't really mean go in, change a light bulb. I mean the bulb in the room isn't working. I'm assuming the light bulb is out. Please go in the room and change the light bulb. When you're done, turn on the light switch. Make sure that the light is still on. If the light doesn't go on, call an electrician. Get the light to work. So the simple task, hey, change the light bulb in room 3, really means make sure that there's light in room 3. And that's a really important concept that those who work with me understand is when I say something, when I mention a task, it's really a task. It could be as simple as a task, but it's also a project, and just take care of it and get it done. And if you're having problems, come back to me and we can discuss how it needs to be modified or changed, or you're hitting some roadblocks. There's nothing wrong with that. But understand what's being asked of you and complete it. Don't just go in, pull out a fully functioning bulb, replace it with a fully functioning bulb, and think the job is done, when in fact the problem is there's no electricity in the building.
I have seen that over and over, and I don't know if it's because as I get older and they get a lot younger, and I find that I have to be so much more specific. When I was younger, when you gave me a job, I was thinking all the time, how do I get this done? How do I finish up? How do I do a good job? And in today's world, I just feel like I have to be so detailed. And like for me, a rock star is somebody who gets it. Like they get me, they get it, they go the extra mile, or they actually do the complete job without me completely detailing every step. But it's also helped me learn how to manage people. You have SOPs, you have your metrics. It does force you to learn and discover other people.
I always tell what I tell them is every time you complete something, you should just instinctively say, what else?
Yeah.
Like, what else? Like, okay, I know I probably need to do one more thing here, and what else? What is it? Oh yeah, flip the switch, make sure that it's, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then just by asking yourself, wait, should I do one other thing? A lot of times you can think of it. But if you don't even go that step and ask yourself what else, you'll never get to that point. Yeah. I would say the second thing, one of my other second pet peeves, or this is really a good indication that things aren't working out. I want to work not only with vendors, but also with staff, where when I tell you or ask you to do something, I don't need to set a reminder to myself that I asked you to do it. Mm-hmm. I know who I can work with. I know which vendors I can work with. In fact, I eliminate vendors as well as staff where I have to keep a list. It's one of the criteria. If I start creating a list of things that I asked you to do to remember whether or not you got them done, you're out.
Yep.
The vendors I work with are amazing because I can send that to them by an email or after a conversation. They hear it, they get it, they know what they need to do, and I never have to worry about setting a reminder to myself.
That's so true. The litmus test is if you can email somebody and then let it go, let it off your list because you're confident that it'll get done. That's when I know there's a staff issue. When I realize I go, oh, I'm emailing, but I know darn well I better check up on this. That's silly. We have plenty to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you have to sit there and ask yourself, oh, you know what? I wonder if it's going to get done.
Yeah.
That's a big sign that maybe that staff needs to find another component.
Let's get back to the surgery center for a minute because that's been coming up a lot during COVID. A lot of you had trouble getting hospital time, at surgery centers, and I'm getting that call a lot. Is it time for me to get my own surgical center? Is it just a nice thing to have, a necessity? Is it going to be a revenue drain for me and I'm going to regret it? When you were building yours, number one, what was your decision-making process? When did you decide it's time for me to build out my own? Or did you start up from scratch? Did you start from scratch?
Historically, I started at the university, so I would, whenever I needed it, I would actually have to use the university's facilities, which were incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And then I converted one of my exam rooms into a JACO accredited office-based surgery. And you can. It doesn't take much. It really doesn't. Now, I'm not talking about ambulatory surgery centers. We're talking about office-based surgery centers or office-based surgery facilities. And you can convert a simple, large exam room into an accredited office-based surgery facility. And that's how I started. Something as simple as that. Now, what gets accredited is not the location and not the person, but the organization. So the organization at the time, it was called Eastside Care, and now it's called Gotham Surgical. At the time, that organization was accredited. And so when I moved out of NYU, I simply notified the Joint Commission that the office-based surgery facility called Eastside Care was getting moved to a new location. And then it does require another visit from them, but not as extensive as the every 3-year accreditation process that they put us through, which is wonderful, I might say. I think as residents, we all hate JACO because the hospital administrators can't stand them and we have to do this or that. I happen to love JACO because they keep us all honest and they keep us with protocols and procedures that keep the patient safe and infection free. So I don't mind that at all. And I'm very proud when the JACO representatives come by every 3 years. I want to show them what we do. But it doesn't necessitate a huge commitment in terms of space. It really doesn't. Do not think that it's going to be a revenue center. Not if you're not for cosmetic surgery. It will break even, but you make your money because you are no longer spending time going to another institution and back. You have the ability to sit at your desk and look on the monitor to see when they're ready for you and just get up and walk over. When you're done with your case, you've got 3 patients waiting for you in the examining room. But probably the most important thing is, particularly in a cosmetic practice, patients don't want to go to facilities. Patients want the anonymity. Patients want the exclusivity. And they want the experience of being in a more luxurious environment than a sterile, cold, and very public environment like a hospital or in any large institution. So I would argue that if you really want to take your cosmetic surgery practice to the next level, it's almost mandatory that you have your own surgery.
I agree. I've as a patient, I've done all of them: the hospital, the surgery center, the private suite. I'll take the private suite any day. It's so much more comfortable. It's private. There's always in and outdoor that I slip in and out. No big deal. The people are so friendly because it's the staff, it's the surgeon staff. So you really get to know them, and they're just, I can't imagine not doing it. You know what else I was thinking? Your conversion rate will be affected if you don't have a surgical suite, because if I have to give you, like I'm the coordinator, if I have to, you say, I want a rhino on, let's check the schedule. And the patient's trying to tell you, I want it on Thursday. And you say, we don't have anything on Thursday because the hospital's booked that. And you'd have to scramble trying to figure that out. There's no way you're going to convert that patient that day because now you're going to go back and forth. And the hospital's more expensive than that surgery center. So now you're thinking, well, maybe we can get you in on Friday in the surgery center and we'll save you a couple dollars. And I just think it would hurt your conversion rates as well, and it's not user friendly. I'll just put it that way.
Right. And I'll put a pitch in for the purpose of the surgeon, and the results is that particularly for the younger surgeon, you want to limit all of your variables, right? You want to have the only variable in your outcome being the patient. That's it.
Yeah.
You want to have the same anesthesiologist. You want to have the same sterile surgical instruments, the same supplies, the same scrub, the same circulator, the same anesthesiologist. You want to have everything be the same, and the only thing that's different on that day is the patient. And that's how you can get consistent, excellent results.
That is such a good point.
I couldn't imagine going into, I'm telling you right now, if I went into another operating room and someone gave me someone else's rhinoplasty set, it would be as foreign as operating on the moon.
Right. I mean, it's almost like cooking in someone else's kitchen, you know?
It is exactly like cooking in someone else's kitchen. You know that. You don't even know where you're spending more time figuring out where all of the pots and pans are, and you're not spending as much time chopping up the ingredients.
For sure. All right. So thank you for that. I just needed to hear, because I have my own opinion, and as a patient, my own opinion is your own private OR suite is the only way to go. As a surgeon, I would think you'd want to save time and be more efficient and take that on, but not take it on as a profit center. Take it on as a convenience for everyone involved.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, if you're trying to think of it as a profit center, you're going to be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not looking at it like that. Even if you break even, and you'll break even, right? You are still so far way ahead of the game. It's ridiculous in terms of convenience. And, just a side note about that, I've been doing this for over 25 years, but I have felt this way ever since I started, which was it's not just about the money. People can't think that way, okay? It's about your livelihood, about your lifestyle, about your happiness, about your contentment, about you enjoying what you do. If all you're going to think about day in and day out is money, 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 I'm telling you something, you're going to burn out, you're going to be unhappy, okay? You need to find a motivating factor greater than just cash.
Well said. So let's switch gears and talk about marketing. And one thing I really would like to hear from you is your marketing plan, because you are working with two very different target markets. Typically, the rhinoplasty is the young kid, and the facelift is the more mature woman. Now, if you could get some kind of combination deal going for the small kid, the rhino, and his mom gets the facelift, I think that would be brilliant. But how are you toggling that? Because it's a very different conversation, marketing message, marketing channels. Can you talk to that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, is what works the best is when the mom who wants the facelift comes in and gives me their children to do the rhinoplasty to see whether or not the mom wants me to do the facelift. And I'm telling you, I've had a couple of those over the years.
Perfect.
It's very, very funny.
Yeah.
And what's even funnier is the children arguing with one another who's going to go first. So that definitely happens.
Yeah.
On one hand, you can't be everything to everybody.
Right.
But there's no reason to just be one thing to a group of people. And I have a passion for rhinoplasty. I love it. I really enjoy doing it. I think I have a strong message there that has been sent out not only by my website, not only by my before and afters, not only by my dedication to, at the time, a separate website just on rhinoplasty. The preponderance of the before and afters of rhinoplasty on Instagram, which, as you mentioned, is more of a younger generation who are viewing them, as opposed to Facebook, which might be seen by an older generation, and more predominance of facelift type marketing materials on websites, which is where the older individuals are going to be looking at, and the print media for more facelift. So different media, which, as you know, is going to be viewed by different populations, are going to get different messages. And they don't contradict with one another because often those two channels aren't looking at the other one. The young child, or the young, not child, but the young individual who's interested in rhinoplasty, they're looking at the Instagram. They may be looking at Cosmo, but they're not reading the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
And they're not reading, any type of couture type of magazine. So you have to know who your audience is for each one of these marketing initiatives, and then target the procedure that you want for those particular marketing materials. So
let's talk about that that trademark thing that you've done, and the GI jaw, which I think is hysterical. That's terrific. How is that differentiating you, or helping you to differentiate from all the others?
Yeah. I'll tell you, my business partner, Dr. Steinberg, he is the world's best coming up with names. I mean, he does this phenomenal male buttocks contouring, and he
Oh.
called it the Brady butt. I mean, the guy's brilliant. Okay, he has a great way for designing the abdomen, and he called it the six-pack abs or something to that effect, or a six-pack liposuction or something. So he's much better than I am. But I wanted a term that reflected how I evaluate a patient, how and more or less the results that I achieve, and how I go about achieving them. And so I developed the natural look process, which I think is what you're referring to, and is a registered trademark. And the natural look process is the means by which I get the results that I do. And it starts with achieving what I call a unified vision. And I explain to the patient, you're going to come to me with your own perceptions, your own requests, your own concerns, your own desires. And I'm going to look at you and see in my own mind what I think I want to achieve, what I can achieve, what is possible, what isn't possible at all. And the first thing the two of us have to do is come up with a unified vision. We both have to realize this is what needs to, or what can be achieved, and what they want to be achieved. And if we can't achieve that unified vision, the natural look process doesn't proceed. It just stops right there. If it does proceed, then we move on to the next step, which is called the prep. And then the prep obviously is a time during which we will, having already set the date for the procedure, we'll sit down again. And we're going to go through the process all over again, answer more questions, do some administrative work, go over the photographs, have them complete the consent forms, etc., so that by the time that the procedure date occurs, the next step, the last thing, all they have to worry about is showing up. That's it. They don't have to worry about medications. They don't have to worry about administrative details. They don't have to worry. They know everything that is going to happen to them that day, and they should and can feel relaxed. Then they go through, obviously, the recovery phase, and they get the final result. So obviously, to a certain degree, we all do this, but I've labeled the actual steps, and I've given criteria for each one of the steps, and I've conveyed that to my patients, and I think it directly relates to the natural appearing results that I'm able to achieve.
I would say, it seems to me, rhinoplasty patients can be the toughest to make happy. Is that true, or do you have a couple yellow flags that come up that you know for sure I'm out? You're not going there.
Yeah, I think rhinoplasty patients can be, but I would say ear patients and lip patients are much more consistently finicky and picky. And patients who come in to have otoplasties done, or if I do any kind of lip revision, what happened was, I think maybe 20 years ago, a woman who had some silicone injected into her lips was going, everywhere and couldn't get any help. And she came to me and I reconstructed her lips. She went online and she told the entire silicone infested lip world that Dr. Miller is the guy to go. The guy. And so I have this little side business as the guy to go for lip reconstructions, which isn't necessarily what you want to build your practice on. But I've got that world in there. And my point to you is that I find that those patients are much harder to please necessarily, because no matter how good you get it, they just can find something else. And I tell them that from the very beginning, I'll make it look great, but I'm telling you right now, you're not going to be happy. You're going to want something more, something done after this, and come back so I can tell you that no, you're not getting anything else done. And it almost becomes a joke because they love the result, but they're like, you're right. Can you just lift it up over here or over here? So, but getting back to your original question about meeting expectations. I think that that's all that we do here, right? That's the only thing really that we in the cosmetic surgery industry are responsible for, is meeting their expectations. That's it. If you have pneumonia, you don't discuss with your doctor what the expectation is after visiting then. You don't say, well, doctor, after I take this, will my cough go away and my stop creating phlegm and my fever be gone and my chills? It's implicit that you're there sick and you want to get better. The doctor gives you the script and you get better. When patients come to me, I have to really understand what is it that you want to achieve. And after 25 years, it's more than just what they're telling me. I bring to that conversation, based on the procedure, all of the expectations that all the other patients have ultimately revealed to me after the surgery, that they never revealed before the surgery, that I know that this patient in front of me may also have.
Like, what's an example of that?
Perfect example. You come in and you say, Dr. Miller, I can't stand my neck. That's what bothers me. All I want is my neck.
Yes.
Is that the only thing about? Yes. And after the surgery is done, well, what about this line over here? I thought that was going to get done, and I thought that this was going to get done. Well, no, you didn't tell me that was your concern. So associated with any procedure, I found, are maybe 3 or 4 associated anticipated results that are almost never vocalized, that you have to bring up in conversation just to find out if they are or not a hidden expectation, and get that on the table right now. I'll give you an example. This is a little bit of a side note, actually. Patient came in a couple of days ago, and well, this is actually not an example of a hidden expectation. This is an example of something else. So I'll just table that for the moment, because it's not really an example of this. It's an example of setting proper expectations. So I mean, I can give you an example if you want.
Sure.
Oh, well, this has to do with just being careful about angry patients. So patients can they can be upset about their appearances, but for some reason, and I don't know why, they can also be angry about their appearances. And those are particularly dangerous patients, because that anger gets transferred to you as the surgeon. And you have to have an honest conversation with the patient ahead of time, that you're here because you don't like that. I'm here to help you. I didn't cause that. And I'm not going to be able to take it away completely. I'll improve it a lot. But if you're not going to be happy with an improvement, I'm telling you right now, you're going to be angry at me. That anger that you have there, are you angry? Yes, I'm angry. Right, that anger is going to go towards me. Corollary of that would be that I never, ever take a patient back with her mother, his mother. Never take a patient back to the operating room if the mother and the child are disputing the necessity or the indication or the intended result of a procedure. Never, ever. Because guess who wins between mommy and surgeon?
Mom?
Sorry?
Mom?
Mom always wins.
Yeah.
All right? And the surgeon will always be the bad guy. So unless they're in complete understanding with one another, I do not bring them back to the OR.
Are you using computer imaging?
I've been using computer imaging for 25 years.
I don't know why it's not used more often. A long time ago, I had a client that he had this down. And when he started doing computer imaging and he and his coordinator had a really nice process going, they probably tripled. Well, plus he also gave her a facelift, the coordinator. So she had a facelift, and then they were using computer imaging. He tripled his facial or his facelifts. It just became a thing. And I love computer imaging. I think it's a great communication tool. Your little is not the same as my little,
That's exactly right. This isn't, what that right there is a classic example of someone who I know is going to be a problem. They tell me what it is that they want. I go ahead and I make the changes on the computer, and then they sort of ignore it and keep using words. And I look at them and I'm like, no, this is not a words business. This is not that's legal. You can go to the legal department, and the other. This is a visual process. Yeah. And if you don't look at that picture and say you like it, then I got to change it. Or maybe that's not what you want, or maybe you don't know. Another potential problem patient is the individual who knows what they don't like but doesn't know what they want.
Good point.
Okay, so they'll look at it and go, and they ignore it, and then they just start describing it, or they pick up their phone and they start showing you other ones. It's like, no, don't show me pictures of Angelina Jolie. Okay, that's you. That's what I can do. Do you like it or not? And if you don't, let me know why, and I'll see whether or not I can make a change. And if they can't do that, don't touch them.
For sure. Also, back to marketing. I almost forgot. What marketing channels are working the best? And now that I learned that you have these other locations, how are you handling that? Do you have to have different websites, different Instagram accounts? How are you going to handle all that?
Yeah. So we track every. Can I mention other vendors? I don't
sure.
know.
Well, yeah, sure. What the heck?
But we have systems. We have systems. I'm trying to keep it bland, but we have systems so that we're able to track. At least with both telephone calls and emails, where they came from. Mm-hmm. So every single marketing endeavor we have, whether it's an Instagram account, whether it's a Facebook, whether it's an ad, which we don't really do, but let's say a sponsored something here or there, whether it's, again, Instagram or
a PPC ad, you're doing anything, Google
AdWords? Or whatever it is, we have a unique telephone number, and we can attribute that phone call specifically to that individual. Mm-hmm. And it's sophisticated enough that if you came in, let's say, on my website, and you lost my telephone number, and you pick up and you call me on Instagram, the system will not, by going on Instagram and getting my Instagram, the number that's listed on my Instagram account, will know that you are actually the same person, and that you originally came to us from the original referral source, and it will keep you on that.
Oh, nice.
But more, I don't know if you found this, but that being said, the truth is, what really is the reason why what marketing source should you really assign a patient?
Word of mouth referrals.
Look at me and I go, oh, how'd you find me? And they're like, oh, well, you've got the world's best Instagram account. Mm. Well, thank you very much. That's great. You like my before and afters? Oh, yeah. I think they're absolutely great. I mean, I never would have known about it had, my doctor not told me about it, but they told me about it, and they said that you were really the best guy to go to. Right. So I went to your Instagram. I go, oh, well, which doctor was that? Oh, well, Dr. So-and-so, because my other friend who you operated on, they told me to go to that doctor. And, I really like my friend's results, which is, I guess my friend is the one who really told me about you, okay? So is it the friend referral, the doctor referral, or the Instagram account?
It's the friend referral, and it's getting all clogged up now because they're zigzagging all over the place, and everyone forgets the true cosmetic patient came typically from a girlfriend or somebody told them about you, typically.
Right. And that's what's really interesting is every once in a while, and I ask all my, I ask the doctors to do this. Every once in a while, I'll just ask a patient, so how'd you hear about me? Mm-hmm. But don't take their first answer.
Right.
Push a little further and you will find that typically they needed 3, 4, 5 points of contact before they actually committed to coming in and seeing you. They heard your name from a doctor. They saw your ad on TV. They ran into your Instagram. They saw your Facebook. They were friends with 3 people who had surgery by you. Trust me, it's usually more than one, which is why you need to have a comprehensive marketing initiative and what I call a digital representation. You need to have a really strong digital representation of your work in all aspects of digital media.
Yep, and on all platforms. So I see you're doing a pretty good job on YouTube. I hope, and I'm assuming you're repurposing all of that. So that's the way to go nowadays. You develop some type of content, repurpose it on every platform you can think of, and that builds your digital footprint. And then people are bound to run into you or hopefully, more than not. So are you spending much time on marketing, or is that outsourced, or how does it, well, it takes you're doing your own YouTubes and you're doing Instagram. So.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is it was a lot easier 20 years ago when all you had to do was worry about SEO and you could pay someone else to do it.
Isn't that the truth?
Because now that it's all about content, you can't outsource content. You got to produce it. Now I can outsource the production.
Yep.
I can outsource the uploading, and I can outsource a lot of other things. But the truth is, you're right. I got to be the one who actually puts it together. And what's even more awkward in some respects is now we are putting our patients. Before it used to be we're just asking, hey, can we use your before and after?
Yep.
Now we have to interview them.
Yep.
Now they're part of our marketing, and it is awkward. I mean, I ask every one of my patients, do you mind, would you like to do B&A? Would you like to do an Instagram? Do you want to do a podcast? Do you want to do this? And I find it a little embarrassing, to be honest with you, that we're at this point. I get it, but I tell them all the time, if you ask, if I was in your team, I would say no. So don't worry about it. If you say no, it's fine.
Actually, that's a great way to say it, because that almost forces them to say, oh, no, of course I will. But I got to tell you, the social proof, amongst the target market you want, the patients talk, it's as good as word of mouth referral, So for you asking, and frankly, it's you asking that gives you such a good result from that. Trying to give that to your staff and say, staff, you ask them if they'll do it. That's almost even more awkward, So I'm glad you see that. And a lot of
it took a long time. I got to be honest with you, Catherine. It took me a long time. Yeah. But now I finally realize the value of it, and patients really appreciate it. And there are a lot of patients who want to share their story, and so I give them that opportunity.
You can see it on Instagram. You have some pretty happy patients who are dying to tell their story. They're very happy doing that. So kudos for you for doing that. So let's go down to mindset. What's driving you? I'd love to figure that out. If I didn't get an MBA, I would have gone to school for psychiatry or psychology, but I didn't want to go that crazy. But what makes you do what you're doing and growing your empire? Because I'm hearing that you're not satisfied with one. You want more. We all want more, but you're going for it. What's driving that?
I wouldn't say I want more. I would say that I don't want the alternative.
Which is?
Complacency.
Yeah.
That's not exciting. I remember I was hiking one day in the woods, and I was having a conversation with myself and asking myself, okay, so what's it all about? I mean, am I supposed to make enough money so that I can retire? And what would I do if I retire? If I retire, I guess people go play golf. Well, if I had a choice, someone said, here's what you can do. You can wake up in the morning and you can spend a day in the operating room, or you can spend a day on the golf course. I will choose a day in the operating room any day, right? I really enjoy what I do. And so for me, it's about avoiding the mundane.
Gotcha.
And appreciating on a daily basis how fortunate and lucky we are to do what we do, to change people's lives, to change, to use our skill set, to use our hands. Ever since I was a kid, I love to fix things. And here I get to do it as an adult and change someone's life. And that's such a unbelievably rewarding and satisfying experience that I don't understand why you would ever want to give that up. That's what motivates me.
What about when you're in your mid-70s and you're do you have an exit strategy? Because eventually, not that I can't imagine retiring. I'm not that type of personality. I wouldn't mind not grinding all the time. I do feel like I'm grinding constantly, but I would like to have other interests,
I do have other interests. As you know, I love technology, and I am sort of building on the side. I'm building a technology company.
Okay, tell us what that is. I forgot about that because I was on your website and I saw it and I thought, oh, that's interesting. You know what I liked about yours? It was very authentic. The chat boxes always pretend that there's somebody there, oh, this is Betty. How can I help you? And yours actually says, what does yours say? It's like, oh, I am the AI, like,
I'm Dr. Miller's artificial intelligence chatbot.
I like that. And I can answer some of your questions, or most of them, hopefully, like it was really authentic. I like that.
Right. And because what that emanated from was I was at a technology conference one day and I just sort of was looking at, it was a discussion about artificial intelligence. And they had it within the context of customer service, and all of a sudden it just was like bing, like, you know what? Hey, frequently asked questions. Patients are always asking the same thing. These conversations are all so scripted.
Yeah.
This is perfect for a chatbot. And that's it. I basically, after that, went out and built what is the only aesthetic industry chatbot that is out there right now. And it works exceptionally well. We get over 80%. 80% of the people who interact with the bot give us their name and their contact information,
nice.
And often what procedure they're interested in as well. And we're constantly metric based, so we're constantly evaluating whether or not the bot is giving responses that are appropriate or not, and tweaking it constantly. We found out, for example, I'm trying to get this information out to our customers. We have around 10 clients right now who are using the bot. And you may find this as well. A lot of offices are reluctant to put on their website the cost of their procedure. Right?
I say at least starting at or ranging from, because in today's world, you cannot skirt around that question.
Correct. Now, if you call an office, every single office has a script that they tell the person, this is how I want you to answer a question about price.
Right.
So it's somehow okay to give that information when there's a back and forth exchange, but not have it be printed on your website. And I get it. But what we did is we took that exchange that went on the telephone and we put it into the chat.
Nice.
And we saw that on the procedures where we allowed results in the same kind of sequence in the chatbot that we were doing on the telephone, had a much higher conversion than when we basically said the typical, every case is different, you'd have to come in and we'd have to give you an evaluation. Routinely, when patients got that result, they just stopped engaging with the bot.
Yeah.
When they were given a range in the manner in which was no different than what people said on the telephone, there was continued engagement.
That's what we want, transparency, and we want a straight answer, and it doesn't have to be the perfect answer, but an okay answer is better than that. I can't tell you, we don't give out pricing.
Right.
People are just not going to tolerate that in today's world. So good for you. Good for you. Okay. So back to mindset. Is there how are you getting to be like this? Are you a reader? Leaders are readers, and what's that other saying? Readers are leaders and something else. But anyway, are there certain books that you like reading or courses, or how are you staying up to date?
I'm a disciple of the strategic coach.
Yep.
I don't know. I think you may have heard that.
Yep.
So,
I know all of you guys are in there. Yeah. Good for you.
It started with Peter Adamson, and Peter Adamson ultimately got Vito Cotella and me in it, and I got Russ Freidel involved, and then I think Manas Constantinides was in it for, I'm not quite sure how many others are in it now. But
here's the funny part about that. While you guys were doing that, I do like internet marketing conferences, so I knew Dan Sullivan from the internet marketing conferences.
Right, so you know Joe Polish probably.
Of course. Yeah, so I know all those guys, and then it's so funny because Dan Sullivan says in one of the talks, I work with some plastic surgeons, and I walked up to him, I said, I work with a plastic surgeon, and he names off all you guys, and it's like, oh my God, what a small world.
So funny. Yeah. So you know Joe Polish, and who else? They have that podcast, I Love Marketing.
The Genius Network?
Genius Network.
That guy. Yes, I did a mastermind with him. Big guy.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Dean Jackson.
Yes, good job.
Dean Jackson. I love Dean.
Yeah.
Dean is just it's so funny because we'll be in the coach and we'll be having this lively discussion and thoughts here and there, and then all of a sudden there'll be this pause and Dan Sullivan will go, okay, Dean, give us your insight, and like in 15 words, Dean just summarizes it perfectly and hands it to everyone on a silver platter.
Yep.
He just has that great insight mind. He really does.
He doesn't talk a lot, but when he talks, it's genius.
Yep. Yeah. I really like both of those guys. Yeah. Joe actually is on I think Joe's on a digital hiatus for a while. I think he just sort of dropped off the whole digital network for a little bit.
I'm also, being more stringent with my time, because that's a rabbit hole that never ends. You follow one guy and then they introduce you to the other guy and the other guy and the other guy. And then I get all tweaked out going, my God, these guys never sleep. I can't live up to that. I just can't do it anymore. I'm not the hustler that they all are, and they're all making billions. It's like, oh, some days I think, why am I comparing myself to them? This is ridiculous. I
don't fall into that. I'll give you a Dan Sullivanism, which I think is really great.
Yeah, he's got a lot of them.
And Dan Sullivan concept is called the gap.
Yes.
Have you heard of that expression?
I have the darn book. Yes. Gosh darn it. That little book he has, The Gap, and it's so true. Yeah. If anyone's an alcoholic or has an addiction, the gap is the answer for why you have that and how to stop it. Right?
Yeah, yeah. And for the listeners, the gap is best described as the distance between your current situation, your current position, your current achievements, and what your goals were, as opposed to your current position, your current situation, and where you were. So a better analogy would be someone who's constantly comparing their progress, not by stopping and looking over their shoulder and seeing how far they've gone from shore and how they can't even see the shore anymore because they've gone so far, but they just keep comparing it to the horizon in front of them, which is unobtainable, and just getting constantly upset and depressed because you're never there. So you measure your success and your achievements by where you as an individual have come from, not necessarily from what you haven't achieved moving forward.
Absolutely.
Use that as motivation, but don't judge yourself on it.
And don't discount how far you've come. We never focus on how far we've come. We always keep going out there. When do I get there? Like way over there. And that helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'll tell you something, and I'll share this with you, I'm very proud of my success. I'm very proud of my achievements. But I can look at a lot of other guys and go, wow, they killed it. They nailed it, And it's sort of like a professional quarterback player in the NFL. Yeah. Not everybody is Tom Brady.
Right.
Not everybody is going to be a Dan Marino. Not everybody is going to be, but they're still playing in the NFL. They're still,
totally.
And that's sort of how I think you have to look at it. Don't judge yourself. There's always going to be someone who you can find who's better than you.
Yep.
And that's fine. Respect it. That's great. But acknowledge how well you've achieved and the success that you've earned.
Wow. And with that, I think we're going to wrap it up because those were giant pearls there. I hope everyone was catching them. You got a little psychology today, also with your business and your marketing. So, Dr. Miller, how can anybody reach out to you if they so chose to?
Oh, sure. I'd be delighted to speak with anybody. My probably best way is through my assistant, but you can still reach me. It's Dr. Miller. That's DrMiller at drphilipmiller.com. drphilipmiller.com. So drmiller at drphilipmiller.com.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And it looks like I'll see you in Florida in November.
I will see you in Florida. It was great speaking with you. It really was.
Thank you. All right, everybody, that'll wrap it for us this episode. And hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please head over to iTunes and subscribe to Beauty and the Biz. Feel free to leave a review if you feel so inclined. And then if you want to get a hold of me with your feedback or questions, just head over to my website, catherinemaley.com, or certainly DM me on Instagram at Catherine Maley MBA. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.